Next Friday marks an anniversary that's sometimes overlooked. It'll be 33 years since the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, then in the former Soviet Union, now in Ukraine, blew apart after an unexpected power surge. The Soviet government initially remained silent, but within days of April 26, 1986, hundreds of thousands of people were evacuated. Dozens died in the months following, and radiation contaminated a huge area that remains uninhabited today. Earlier this weekend, I spoke with Adam Higginbotham, author of Midnight in Chernobyl, the untold story of the world's greatest nuclear disaster. This is almost 33 years ago, and here you are putting out a book now. What's untold about it?
Well, I would say that the principal aspect of what's untold about it is that this version of the story is true.
What did we get wrong?
Well, because the Soviet government did such an excellent job of attempting to cover up the truth at the beginning. You know, most people's conceptions of what happened are kind of rooted in the initial propaganda that the Soviet Union put out, and also the misinformation that resulted from a lack of information. So, for example, you know, a lot of people still think that tens of thousands of people died almost immediately as a result of this accident.
That's not the case.
That's not the case. But part of the reason for that is Western correspondents in Moscow weren't allowed access to any information. So they did their best with kind of rumors and hearsay, with the result that I think within a week of the accident, the New York Post was reporting that 15,000 people had died and their bodies buried in a nuclear waste dump somewhere in Ukraine.
And when in fact it was what?
When in fact the death toll from the accident by that point was 2.
2?
One man died in the initial explosion. A second man died by dawn that day as a result of burns he sustained in the explosion.
And then how do we calculate the ones who sort of got horrible cancers?
I mean, the official figures are that within 5 months, another 29 people had died as a result of radiation exposure they received in those few hours after the first explosion. But then when you start to try and attribute cancers directly to the results of the accident, things get a lot trickier because of the complexities of epidemiology, but also because of the extent of the attempts at a cover-up by the Soviet government.
You know, in a way, when you look at this in a larger picture, this is almost one of the things, I think, that collapsed the Soviet Union. This catastrophe and what they had to pay to try to clean this up. I mean, I don't know what the rest of the Soviet economy was doing at the time, but it was really startling.
It's, I mean, the cost of the accident certainly didn't help an already sort of staggering Soviet economy.
Right.
But I think that the more significant impact that it had in contributing to the collapse of the empire was the way it changed Gorbachev's mind. He was pursuing these ideas of glasnost and perestroika, of economic reform, in particular, quite softly in the lead up to the accident. And it was only after Chernobyl that he really realized exactly how deep the rot went in the system that he'd inherited. And that seems to have encouraged him to kind of plunge into these economic reforms at quite reckless speed.
Yeah.
And as a result, those reforms were botched. That really destroyed the Soviet Union.
Yeah. This isn't a book that's necessarily against nuclear technology or for. It seems to be more about how we collectively put so much faith in technology.
I think that's right. I mean, I've tried to show the facts of what happened, rather than including any polemic that's either pro or anti-nuclear energy. I think the wider lesson of the story is one of overconfidence in technology, which I think is really is obviously still with us today.
Yeah, besides Facebook, we're talking about big data that we're not as conscious of, artificial intelligence.
Exactly.
That is,
and we're assuming it's always improving our lives,
yeah,
rather than perhaps controlling and altering the way things happen.
All right, Adam Higginbotham, Midnight in Chernobyl is the name of the book. Thanks so much.
Thank you.